Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 57 of Creative Writers and Illustrators. And my guest for the day is Deepa Agarwal. It's Friendship Day, and what better way to celebrate it by talking about friendship stories? So, hello, ma'am. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Shamla. And how are you?
I'm also fine. So let's get started talking about this book. This is a collection of 9 stories, and
Yes,
which you first written in magazines, which was first published in magazines and anthologies. So I'm just wondering about your frame of mind. While you were writing through these stories, do you think they have while you were compiling these stories together, you were like, what was I thinking when I wrote this particular story? Did you change the plot or anything at all? Or were they like you said, no, my thoughts were same, my views were the same on friendship then, and they're same now, and so I shall publish it as it was.
yes. I didn't change the stories at all.
Hmm.
I wrote one new story actually,
Mm-hmm.
and the story titled "Why Me?"
Hmm.
But the rest of the stories had all been published earlier,
Hmm.
and I read through them. I didn't make any major changes. Maybe just you know, some minor,
Hmm.
points of uh, grammar or whatever. But I kept the stories as they were, and as you said, my views of friendship remain the same.
Right. So my favorite was green chicken pox items. And I
Okay.
also like the best Hanuman because both these stories were about making assumptions about people. And I think it's not just kids, it's also adults who we are very quick to judge other people and make our own assumptions based on our experiences. So, do you have any thoughts when you look back, about what it was that triggered writing these 2 stories in particular?
Okay, thanks a lot. Green chicken poxitis, this is a story I read out a lot in schools
Mm-hmm.
because, it's humorous and children always enjoy it and they're intrigued,
Mm-hmm.
by green chicken poxitis. And actually, it's sort of inspired by, when I was a child, I used to really hate it when my parents, had some child over whom I was supposed to be friendly with, and I used to feel quite irritated. So that memory, was responsible for creating this story.
Hmm.
And I'm really glad you liked it. And the other one you mentioned was
Was the best Hanuman?
the best Hanuman. Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, that is more of an observation, during the Shara time.
Hmm.
uh, Kids, they really enjoy all the, paraphernalia that is being sold, the masks and the bows and arrows and all that. And how, younger children can be quite irritating at times, when in older girls,
Yes.
I've noticed this even among my own children, that the
Hmm.
older ones, they don't like the younger ones to hang around and they get irritated and all that. So that is where it began, and it came in the festival stories
Hmm.
collection, the Shara and Diwali stories collection published by Hachette. That's where it first came out, and yeah, I gave a lot of thought to the story, and I set it in a kind of underprivileged area because I think the kids there celebrate with more gusto, and that one particular uh, the thought that goes through the girl's mind that she's going to announce a prize, and that also has a real life connection because long time back, I remember when we were, I mean, fairly new in Delhi, and we used to hear the sounds of the Ram Leela from a distance, and somebody would say, uh, हनुमान जी के को मैं 2 रुपए का इनाम देना चाहता हूँ and that sounded so funny, but
Hmm.
it was like and that person probably felt happy that they could do something like that. So all these things they come together, all these little scraps of memory, they go into stories.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. This book is also about betrayal of friends and bullies and parental angst, peer pressure and peer acceptance. Now, you have a strong bond with your grandkids. Do you think a lot has changed in terms of rules of friendship, or the way friendship is kind of woven in today's digital world when compared to the times when you were a schoolgirl?
Well, of course, a lot has changed, but there are basically some relationships
Hmm.
that remain the same at some level. Of course, I would say the world has become more competitive. So
Mm-hmm.
this thing about you talk about, betrayal of friendship. There's, children will do it more easily, perhaps. But
Yes.
every child is different. Some children are more sentimental, and they have this strong belief that, oh no, my friend, I will not let my friend down. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel all the things that you experience in relationships, and not just in friendship but other relations also, that sometimes somebody is going might let you down, and you have to understand and try to take it in your stride.
Hmm.
But yes, of course, in the digital world, things have, that somehow maybe that kind of closeness is not there. I may be
Hmm.
totally wrong, because I do know when I observe my grandchildren how devoted they are to their friends,
Hmm.
and how, when there's a disagreement, it sometimes becomes even more intense
Hmm.
than I recall. But
Hmm.
I think we have been through all that. When a friend, for some reason which could be very petty, there is a breakup of friendship, and the thought how one can go back, pick up
Hmm.
you know maybe not the same, but be friends again.
Hmm. Yeah. So the only story which sticks out to me is Why Me? And the reason is because it's the only story which has boy characters. And I do understand that it was a later edition.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what made you add that particular story to this collection?
Well, we had selected my editor at the time in the Scholastic.
Hmm.
So she had selected these 8 stories, and then she said, "Why don't you write a new one for us?" And as you mentioned, that they're mostly either all girl stories or a girl and a boy. There is one story with a girl and a
Yeah.
boy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
three red balloons, which another story which children have enjoyed.
Hmm.
So it just so happened that this story
Hmm.
occurred to me, that how children cope with the stress of like financial hardship or an accident. Because when you see a child, sometimes you see a child in a wheelchair,
Hmm.
and you wonder, and you see how separate they feel from their classmates, and there will be children who are sympathetic and the others who are not. And in this story, there's that issue of the father's guilt because of the accident, that
Hmm. Yeah.
child in the wheelchair. And
Hmm.
then also, again, it's about counting your blessings, I think, in the end,
Yes.
because uh, the the boy, he is upset because his family is in financial distress,
Hmm.
and then he realizes that there's someone who has, in a way, more severe
Hmm.
problems. So it's about that, making the most of what you have and trying to be positive.
Yes, true. I think the world has become materialistic, and so sometimes not just children. Again, I'm repeating myself. Even adults, we forget to count our blessings. And go into
Yes,
a
that's the thing,
total rabbit hole. Go down a rabbit hole. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and also, the result of the whatever the rise of consumerism,
Yes.
and you are looking for more, like, say, designer clothing or
Hmm.
expensive holidays, and you remember this is what bothers the child, that they'll not be able to go for those fancy holidays. And in school, again, uh, you know how it is these days, a culture of bragging.
Yeah.
So that is what I thought I could project through this story.
Hmm. So, most of your popular works are either anthologies and, of course, historical fiction. So, what is it about these two formats that you enjoy writing? Because it kind of gets reflected in your writing, and I guess that's why you're doing more of them.
You mean the short stories?
Yeah, the short stories. There was Kashmir, Kashmir,
Yes.
and
Well,
then
I
there
think
have been so many others that you have written.
yes. Basically, the short story is my favorite form.
Hmm.
And in between, publishers were not bringing out too many short story
Hmm.
collections because there's that feeling that they don't sell well. And that is even more true for, short story collections for adults.
Hmm.
And I began writing, my writing career for children by contributing to magazines, and that is how many of us.
Hmm.
That is how we start. And I had a lot of short stories. And I really enjoy writing short stories.
Hmm.
So since I had these stories, I asked Sushmita, who was at Scholastic at that time, that I have these stories on the theme of friendship. Would you like to take a look at them? And she did, and she was very nice. I think we didn't take one or two of the stories that I had
Hmm.
originally, and then she suggested maybe one more story you can write, so that it's
Hmm.
not all just old stories. So that way, and then after that, again, Kashmir, the suggestion came from
Hmm.
from write a collection of short stories set in Kashmir,
Hmm.
because that sort of to try and understand what children in conflict areas go through.
Right.
And yeah, so that's why I think these two collections came out
Hmm.
soon, one after the other. But I have earlier collections
Hmm.
which are not so well. One is called Go Girl Go, published
Yes,
by
I remember that too. Yeah. 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 Hmm.
and two of my old collections are out of print, sadly. Two or three, actually. I have three or four short story collections which are now have been out of print for quite some time.
Hmm.
But I feel there is again a revival of interest in short story collections, and schools like to pick them up for supplementary readers, which has happened with friendship stories.
Hmm. So, you haven't answered about what attracts you towards historical fiction.
Historical fiction. Well, it's just that I read a lot of historical fiction. I really
Okay.
enjoy historical fiction.
Hmm.
And it's always very interesting for me to read about, personalities and histories, people who have been achievers
Yeah.
and the lives of, the way things were in earlier times.
Hmm.
There's a lot of curiosity and interest,
Hmm.
uh, in these kind of uh, this kind of fiction.
Hmm.
So since I read a lot of historical fiction, I enjoy writing historical fiction as well, and trying to imagine, what a character, a child, or a young person living at that time, how you know they would they have similar kind of uh, hopes and ambitions as a child of today. Of
Right.
course, what was their daily life like, basically? What were the challenges they had to face? And
Hmm.
how did they overcome them?
Hmm.
So, like my teenage diary of Noor Jahan,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
total,
Hmm.
totally fiction
Hmm.
about a historical character.
Hmm. Hmm. So you also have another non-fiction book? No, it's a mix of fiction and non-fiction for older adults, which has been recently published.
Are you talking about the Arthashastra?
Yes, yes.
The Arthashastra for children.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. Is it
you
a
know,
mix of fiction and non-fiction, or is it?
no, it is just the Arthashastra of Kautilya
Mm-hmm.
simplified and made easier to understand for children.
Hmm.
And actually, I have added you know allusions, examples
Hmm.
from history and contemporary times to explain the concepts
Right.
better.
Hmm.
And this had been kind of a, s- a book that I had wanted to write for a long time, because I have done biographies also.
Hmm.
And I had done the biography of Chanakya almost, well, more than 10 years back.
Hmm.
And at that time, I had read a translation of Kautilya's Arthashastra.
Hmm.
And I was really fascinated by the concepts and the fact that he went into so much detail on the art of governance and how many aspects of governance were covered, which are not, really taken up even today.
Hmm.
Like, it's very interesting to think that, he thought of laws against, say, child abuse,
Hmm.
and part of women's property rights,
Hmm.
then the protection of animals, animal sanctuaries,
Hmm.
and also consumer rights. That was like really very intriguing for me. That like, okay, if the tailor
Hmm.
ruins your clothes, he should give compensation, or the washerman, as happens in movies. Sometimes they ironing, they
Hmm.
burn out clothes and things like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So he had
Yeah.
taken all that into account, or even the goldsmiths. He the this that Bureau of Standards, that hallmark that has
Hmm.
for gold.
Yeah.
That is a
Yeah.
fairly recent law, and
Huh.
he had thought about all these things
Hmm.
2,000 years ago.
Hmm.
So that was a real eye opener for me. And I said we should, children. Of course, there are other ancient texts that children
Hmm.
are retold for children, like the Panchatantra, or the, you know, or say Vikram Betal and the Jatakas and all that. But the Arthashastra, of course, it's an enormous tome, and for adults also to read it,
Yes.
it's not too many people would be interested in reading it. So I
Hmm.
thought maybe just the children should get an understanding that these kind of works were thought about and compiled in our
Hmm.
country over 2,000 years ago.
Hmm.
And the fact is that the Arthashastra has had a lot of global influence, which
Hmm.
we don't realize that many of his theories have been followed not only by our own leaders, like from the time of Jawaharlal Nehru
Hmm.
onwards to Prime Minister Modi.
Hmm.
They have followed some of their principles, some of the theories
Hmm.
that Kautilya talks about in the Arthashastra, and even like Henry Kissinger, and I think that was really an eye opener for me,
Hmm.
that so many foreign leaders and politicians had studied the Arthashastra and taken from it.
I'm
This
so
was
glad you wrote it for ideal kids. That's,
yeah, it was yeah.
but I'm also curious to know, like this book it's humongous, and to how did you go about choosing the right topics for kids?
Well, it was a very, very difficult book to write.
Mm.
And what I tried to do, I followed the translation that I consulted Aileen Ragarajan. I tried to follow the main headings of his chapters,
Hmm.
but I did it selectively
Hmm.
to see which aspects could have some uh, modern parallels or examples from history,
Hmm.
to just clarify them further. And because these are concepts are not very easy to grasp.
Hmm.
So, if I giving an example,
Hmm.
then it becomes clear what he is trying to say.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of condensation, and I must say my editors were wonderful because the editing process was quite long, and
Hmm.
we had a lot of, there was a lot of back and forth about
Hmm.
what should be kept and what should be
Hmm.
just left out so that it's not a tedious read for children.
Hmm. So, how important do you think is the essence of Arthashastra for today's governance?
Well, I think it's definitely very important because all the theories of diplomacy, the balance of power among nations,
Hmm.
then the first of all the simple basic governance not only of the whole country
Hmm.
but urban planning, for example, urban planning. He talks a lot about urban planning, then also safety, security, fire safety, which
Hmm.
we are still, I must say, lax about in the city. There are all these terrible incidents that are taking place. Then about trade and commerce. And the main thing is that he stresses that it is the economy that is the most important aspect in governance. That sound economy takes care of everything, and it's not, the defense is important, and administration is important, but
Hmm.
without proper, a well-filled treasury. Uh,
Hmm.
but there, of course, we're talking about the time of the monarchy, but
Hmm.
without a well-filled treasury, without sound economic policies, without seeing to it that the country is prospering, the king will not be a successful ruler, and the welfare of the people should be his main concern. Of
Yes.
course, he will wage war to, you know, for various reasons, for defense or for acquiring more territory. But if his finances are not good, then he cannot be successful. So that is the thing which he comes back to over and over again. That first of all, the primary, uh, you know, import, the aspect that is of primary importance for
Hmm.
the ruler
True.
is to see that there is a sound economy, and then how how agriculture should be encouraged, and trade and commerce also
Hmm.
be encouraged, and security of the people be guaranteed.
Yeah, in everything, what you said just now, it makes so much of sense that, different aspects need to be introduced to children at the right age. They can't be living in gated communities and, go to school and think that that's what the world is all about. So thank you so much for joining. Before you go, can you quickly tell readers what they should be expecting from Friendship Stories this Friendship Day?
Well, you can expect almost all the different, feelings that you go through as a friend,
Mhm.
loyalty, keeping your friend happy, but then also seeing to it that when your friend is trying to do something wrong, how you should try and put them on the right track. I mean, what is true friendship actually? So this is what I hope that the takeaway is. And then also you mentioned about the story, you know, uh, jumping to conclusions, making wrong assumptions about people. So this is what I hope that they will take away. And then also how precious this relationship is, friendship. So should do everything possible to
Hmm.
maintain our with our friends.
Yeah, so also let the readers know why they should gift Arthashastra to the teens and the other youngsters in the family.
Well, definitely they should give the Arthashastra.
Can
First
you
of
lift the
all,
book? Can you
yeah,
lift
yes.
Arthashastra and talk about? Yeah. Yeah.
First of all, to discover this very important work from our ancient history, and then also to understand what good governance is all about, because they in the future they may be administrators, and they'll definitely be citizens, because the duties of the citizens are also mentioned. So it's a very comprehensive kind of a book, and what we have is, if not exactly in a nutshell, but we have tried to put it in a simplified manner that children can grasp it, and also understand the how in the course of history all these theories have been tried and tested, and how well they have worked at different times, not only in our country, but in other parts of the world.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. That's all we have time for.